welcome to Live Long in Color. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and joining me today. Today's video is going to be how I color a picture using oil pastels and colored pencils. If that is something that you are interested in, please stand by. But first, I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to my channel, liked and commented on my videos. You're also greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Now, I originally did another one doing this exact thing. Actually, this is my third attempt. The first one, I did a different picture. I posted it, and my husband and he looked at it and he said, I think you rambled a bit too much and it went a little bit too long. So I'm going to try to do this again. And then when I was starting this one again, I had a glitch on my camera, and so the picture is already started, but I didn't get very far. So first things I'm going to say is I'm coloring out of the new Easy Coloring book by Joshua Dunbar. I like to use his pictures a lot when I use oil pastels. He has a light grayscale to his pictures that I like. I picked this one. I like to pick pictures that have a lot of large open spaces that make it easier to do. When you use the method I use, you lay down the color and then you wipe it off, and if it's a lot of small spaces, it has a tendency to smear outside the lines a lot more and makes it just a little bit more difficult. I am going to use Crayola oil pastels. They're very inexpensive. I know they're under $10. I'm thinking like around $6. I'm not exactly sure how much I paid for them. I will say that when they came in, they did not look this neat. I have had to clean them up, but they work really well and they're very inexpensive. The other tools that I use a cotton round. You can buy any brand. This one is Whisper. I like them because they're a little bit more durable than the other ones that I have bought. Some cotton rounds. I use a cosmetic brush. This was just an inexpensive one from Walmart. I use this to wipe off any crumbs that fall off of the oil pastels. That's important to do because if you don't, you can make color smear where you don't want it to go. A Tombow eraser, and in this case, any color pencils you want. I'm going to use Crayola. My goal is to show that you don't need to have expensive oil pastels or expensive pencils to color a beautiful picture. And I also want to show, at least I hope I can convey, how much fun this is. When you're using oil pastels, you can lay down a lot of color really fast, and then you can use the pencils to shade however much you want. So it's a really nice, quick, simple way to color a picture. And like I said, I have a lot of fun. I love oil pastels. I don't think they get enough love in the coloring community. Okay, so all that being said, let's get started. As you can see, I already did start this. Like I said, I had a little technical difficulty with the camera, but I'm back. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to sit down, and then I am going to start on the stems. So what you do is you just lay down some color. You don't have to get all the way to the side, because once you use this cotton swab, you can push the color into the crevices that you couldn't get the first time. And if you didn't quite lay down enough, you can just add just a little bit more. Also, since I'm going to go over this with colored pencil, if you leave just a little bit of white space, like right here a little bit, it doesn't matter. You can go over it with the pencil. But if you aren't going to use pencil, you just keep going over it until you get it what you need it. And now, When you are doing a small space like the stem, what I do is I use my finger and I just wipe it off following the curve of the stem, like so. And that way you avoid getting it outside the lines. Then you can go over here to this little leaf here and do the same thing. Now, if you're doing colors like this stem is going to be the same color as this leaf, so I don't have to be quite as careful going into there. I can go over there and it won't really matter much. So you always wipe it off in the direction away from the outer borders. That way you don't get it outside the lines. Another technique you can use is just do little circular motions inside where you're going to wipe it off. If you do get it outside the line, which I don't know if you can see that, but it got just a little bit right here. What you do then is, that's what the eraser is for. You just erase it. And I'm also going to erase this just to show you that it does come off for the most part. It might not 100% come off, but it does come off. Then you just use this to get all the crumbs off. And as you can see, I'm sorry about that, I got a busy road in front of me. Most of it does come off. Next, I'm going to do the flower, a little bit of this flower here. I like to work in sections. It just makes it easier for me. The one thing I don't think you should do, although I have done it, is do the whole picture. If you try to color the whole picture at once, sometimes what happens is the oil pastel will start to dry, and then it makes it a lot harder to push the color where you want it to go. And there's some crumbs, and what I do is I just wipe them off. Now, don't use the same side as where you've already used it if it's a darker color like that, because it'll just get into the yellow and you don't want that. And really, that's all you do. You just lay down the color and wipe it off. Now, I want to talk backgrounds for a minute. My rule of thumb in doing a background is it doesn't really matter too much if you do it before or after you finish your picture. But I do think that if you're using a darker color background, say you wanted to do a black or a dark gray or something like that, the color, I think it's important to lay it down first. That way, if it gets into the actual picture itself, you can erase it. Although the darker colors are a lot harder to erase than the lighter colors. I have a tendency to always use light colors for the background, unless it's like the eyeshadow. But if I'm using an oil pastel background, I try to keep it light, because to me, the darker the color, the harder it is to control. And although I have colored pictures using black and dark blue, it's a lot harder. I prefer to use lighter colors, but you don't have to. So in this picture, I'm going to do a light blue background. And what I try to do is I try to start in the area, the closed in areas first. And you just put as much as you can there. And you use it. And it's basically the same technique. And like I said, if you can't get it. Now, if you're trying to get into a real tight area and you just can't get it, what you can do is you can take the oil pastel and rub your cotton swab on the tip and then use that color to get into the areas where you need to get. And as you can see, that helped that out. And then we do this one. And like I have said, the more you use the cotton swab, the more color it gets on it, the easier it becomes to push the color. Now, I'm not going to use pencil on the background, so I try to get as close to, as possible to the actual picture of the flower. And then get a clean one here. And then I just use circular motions to keep the color in the area that I want without spreading it into, if you do spread it a little bit, just kind of wipe it out of the picture of the flower. But you don't want to wipe too much going this way either, because you'll get the yellow or whatever color this is into the background, which you don't want to do either. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to time lapse the rest of this, and then I will come back when it is time to lay down the pencils. See you in a bit. One thing that happened that I did want to mention, that I did a mistake, was when you're wiping, it is very important that you hold on to this paper, like where you're going to wipe, very carefully, because I crinkled it, and that is something you don't want to do. So you always kind of just put your hand there, hold it down when you wipe like that, because if you don't, you will crinkle the paper, which is what I did. So you have to be careful, which is one of the reasons I like personally to use cardstock when doing this. But if you are careful, you can do this without doing this. I have done it before, but it is a good demonstration to show you what not to do. So there you go. Let me get back to the time lapse. Okay, so now we're getting ready to do the outlining with colored pencils. And what I do is I pick colors that are usually slightly darker than the color that I put down, so we can do the shading. In this case, I'm going to use this yellow green from Crayola. And basically, you just look at the shading that's there, if it's there in this case, and you just color over the darker bits. Now, if there is no shading, my usual rule of thumb is I outline next to the outline of the item that I'm coloring. So I always go over that, and then I just go over any existing lines that are there, and that helps bring out the picture a little bit more and give it more life to the picture. And normally, since I'm a straight colorist, this process doesn't really take that long. See, like right in here, it's darker. You just go over it a little bit more with the colored pencil. And any spots that you miss along the outline, you just go over. And it's really fairly easy. If you feel like the stem here is a little too light, just lightly go over it with your pencil to give it a little bit more color. And right here, I feel like it's a little bit lighter than it should be. Just do the same thing. And then just go heavier on the pencil where you want to darken it. It's amazing how just a simple little outlining of the already existing lines that are there, just adding a bit of color to those, adds dimension to your picture and makes it just a tad more realistic, I guess you would say. And then for the flower itself, I don't know whether this orange is going to work, but I'm going to use this orange even though it's darker, way darker, just to kind of give it some extra color. Because one thing I will say, with the technique that I use, blending the colored pencil is not that easy. And then I'm going to go over that with the yellow just to lighten it up a tad. And basically, you're just adding color wherever. But that's one of the reasons I like to use some things with light shading or light grayscale, is because it pretty much just tells you where to shade. And I'm never very good at finding the light source of anything, so anything that gives me help, I'm all for it. And then we go to the big flower. You don't have to use such a contrasting color. I was originally going to use the yellow to do this, but then I thought, no, let me go with something darker and more contrasting, just to give it a bit more color to it. And I'd have to check the time, but I don't think this process took more than an hour, start to finish. So it's really the most time-consuming part to me for this whole picture was the background. And if you were to go with a chalk background or a eyeshadow background, then this picture would have taken a lot less time. Normally I don't do a lot of oil pastel backgrounds. Because I just like the way that the eyeshadow goes a lot faster. But once I get through this, also I wanted to mention, I don't usually care if I get out of the lines too much, because I put washi tape almost over all of my borders. And there we go. That's that. That's how I color a picture using oil pastels and colored pencils. Also, I did want to mention the crinkling here in this corner was more than usual, because normally when I color a picture, I will turn it, and that way I can work closer to myself. I was trying to work without turning the picture, and that made it a bit more difficult. So I don't want y'all to think that this happens. I mean, you can be careful, and as long as you hold it and you're wiping in small sections where you're holding it, like that, it's not going to crinkle. But like I said, I was trying to do it from here, sitting down, and it was not working out too well for me. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. I want to thank you for sticking by and staying with it. And until I see you next time, stay safe, stay happy, and live long in color. Bye-bye.